All right. Welcome, students. Welcome, everybody who watches or is listening to this. This is another episode or class period of the Being a Fan of Disney class and podcast. And today, I'm joined by three of the members of the Grand Circle Tour podcast. And they're Stan Solo, who's spoken in the class before for all the Star Wars listeners who have watched or listened to his interview. Then we have Dan Hansen and Beatrice Dennis. And I have listened to the Grand Circle Tour podcast and occasionally try to get on the live show when I can in the evenings. And I'm really a fan of what they do. So I wanted to get them as a group to talk to us about kind of the makeup of their group and what goes on behind the scenes of their show. And so without further ado, I want to welcome everybody. And if we could, we'll start with just quick introductions that if you can, that 30-second to minute introduction. And we can go ahead and start with Beatrice.
Hi there, I am the newbie of the group. So I just joined this fabulous group in January. So I'm getting my feet wet, still a little bit nervous about being here, but come from 15 years of working in television background and haven't been on the mic in decades, but it's been wonderful. I'm currently a travel planner, and so I do live, eat, and breathe Disney and all sorts of travel. So this has been just a fun little breakaway for me to just kind of play with other Disney fans. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and Beatrice, if I can, for the students and everybody who's seen the connection, Beatrice works with MEI Mouse Fan Travel. And so for anybody who has watched or listened to Becky Mankins interview or visit with us, they work together. And real quickly, what is your background in television?
So I went to radio and television, graduated, and I started out in operations. So I started doing camera and graphics and that sort of thing, worked my way up to the sales department to where I wasn't the person out selling commercials, but I was the person placing the commercials in the right spot and preparing the presentations for these account executives to sell commercial spots in TV. So that was more of my background. And one day I just realized that television in the Orlando market, which is where I live now, is a little bit more cutthroat and not as happy and fun. In fact, when I turned in my notice, they're like, "This isn't your Disney World." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, that's why I'm leaving." So I am very, very happy to be able to create the magic. Briefly before COVID, I worked with Disney, and our job, they told us our job was to create happiness. So I think that background and that little taste of Disney was the perfect lead into what I'm doing now, because that's exactly what I'm doing. We create happiness.
Well,
So
very, very cool. Thank you.
you're
And thanks for expanding on that background a little bit. That's something kind of interesting we talk about in classes when we, especially when some of the mega sports events are coming up. So next we have Stan Solo for your quick introduction, Stan.
Yeah, so I'm the only Canadian in the group, being from Winnipeg, and we got a blizzard happening right now. A lot of snow coming down. I'm one of the original members of the original 8 that we had. There's only 3 of us left of the original, and that's about it, really. We don't make the schedule.
And then Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, Cody, first of all, thanks for having us on. Really looking forward to this, and great thing that you do here, and big fan. So just wanted to say that. But my name is Dan Hansen. I'm from Long Island, New York. In my real life, I work for a pretty large insurance company. So I'm in like the corporate world. And I don't know, a couple of years ago when we started this podcast, I needed like an outlet. I needed a way to talk about Disney with people that were like me, not just theme parks, but movies and now Disney Plus and everything that goes with it. So, that's one of the reasons why we started this. I'm also one of the, I guess there's three of us, right, Stan? Three founding members left, along with Stan and Jason, another one of our co-hosts. But the last 4 years, has it been? Almost 4 years. I can't believe it's been that long. Have just flown by, and I've just been having a blast getting to know with the Disney community better and being involved in a lot of things Disney. So
yeah, well, thanks, and thanks for the kind words. Also, the one thing that I noticed, and one reason I wanted to talk with all of you is when I started teaching this class, it really kind of allowed me to start to do a deep dive into my fandom. And so I quickly realized just a small percentage of the very large number of groups that are active on social media and on Facebook, particularly on Facebook, that are Disney fans. And I was really, really impressed with the number of people who do have that common connection for Disney and want to talk about Disney, which in outside of this class and what I write about is very, very important when we talk about the connections that people have and the commonalities that people have. So I've always been really, really interested in that. And then that led me to being very interested in the Grand Circle Tour podcast and kind of the makeup of that. So that's where we'll start. How did it start? Like, how did everybody come up with the idea that you're going to do this? And then for people that don't know, and if I'm incorrect, how did you come up with the name Grand Circle Tour podcast?
Dan, you want to take how we got together?
Yeah, it's a funny story, and it's kind of a story of chance, to be honest. We originally, there were 8 of us that all started. Like we said before, there's only 3 of the original members still here, and we'll talk about that later, about how we kind of go in and out with our hosts. But we were all contacted by one individual. We're not going to bring his name up, but he knows who he is. And
he's kind of like the 9th original member, but for only like a week.
He was the 9th member. He was like, the 5th Beatle type thing,
Yeah.
And he contacted us via Facebook Messenger, all of us separately. He had this idea of getting a whole bunch of people together. It was some crazy, convoluted idea, to be honest, in the beginning. But we all kind of got together. And actually, those 8 people that were with us, 9 people that were with us, actually weren't even the original 8. It was even more people beforehand. But we talked for about 6 months, I think, something like that on Facebook, just kind of coming up with an idea and trying to plan out how we would run the show. What happens is life gets in the way. This is a big commitment, right? Mm-hmm. This is a huge commitment. And one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved is, like I said before, I wanted to have that outlet. But time, I have a family, I have a job, time is of the essence in my life. So to split the duties 8 ways seemed like a win in my book. Unfortunately, the person that got us together kind of bailed out pretty early on, even before we did our first recording. And it looked like it was kind of like a dead project at that point. But I think, Stan, I messaged you actually, and I said, hey, do you want to just keep this going and see what happens? And you said yes, and everyone else said yes. And that's basically how we started. Little did we know, we didn't know, in the beginning, we thought it was just going to be, let's get together and try to figure out this podcasting thing. I think it was about a year into it when I really said to myself, wow, this is something that people like are starting to really listen to and like, and be part of our lives, their lives, or we're part of their lives. And it's really surreal, to be honest with you, when we think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. The to jump in real quick, one of my, because I have a habit of forgetting things if I don't jump in right away.
Yeah.
One of the things that is one of my favorite things about the show, and maybe you could provide a little bit of background, I don't know, but a lot of the things you all do are over Facebook Live, correct? And then you have the Facebook Live, but then you will do like sometimes a podcast recording, correct?
It started off as a podcast, is
Okay.
what it was originally started off as. And then we kind of branched out into the Facebook Live, and it's also on YouTube as well. And that's actually still is, the podcast is still the main show.
Okay.
That's still the main focus, is the podcast. And then the live show was just kind of like a thing we just started doing kind of because of COVID starting.
Yeah.
And we were all like, people were at home and like, well, let's chat online. And we ended up, go live while we're, visiting with each other. It was kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
So that's every week we do that, but then we also do the weekly show as well as we do like movie reviews and stuff like that as well. So the podcast is still the key of the group.
Okay.
I feel anyway, that's the most important part of it.
Yeah.
The live show is kind of just for fun.
We've gone now, I think next week will be our 200th regular weekly show.
Okay.
Of a podcast. So it's 200 weeks in a row, but we've probably done another 100 to 200 extra shows, which we call detours.
Yeah.
Movie reviews or whatever, along with a weekly live show for the last couple of years.
Yeah. So it is a very big time commitment for everybody. One of my favorite things about it is, and I don't know, you all tell me how much editing goes in before a podcast is released, but when I'm listening, and sometimes I don't know if it's the live show or if it's the podcast, because I can't tune in the evenings for the live show. But when somebody is joking around and if somebody says anything, somebody might say, "Oh, it's okay, we'll edit it out." We'll edit it out. Like it's never edited out, which is like, at this point, to me, it kind of seems like an inside joke that everybody gets to share with. That's one of my favorite things, is that everybody is just like laughing and having a good time. And then it's like, yeah, we'll just edit this out. But like we get to hear everything, which is totally awesome.
So that's like our number.
Me too. I'm the newbie here, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll edit that out." And I'm like, I don't really know if I should believe you or not.
and then you listen and it's on the show.
The number one compliment we get from our listeners, which we call passengers, by the way, but our listeners is exactly that, is that we don't take ourselves too seriously. And we make the joke that we're making millions of dollars, all of us, like, doing this, but let's face it, we're not making any money here. And it's really just because of our love of Disney is why we do this, and the Disney community. But I think that's what makes the show what it is that we all, not only do we get along, but we joke around with each other. And a lot of our listeners have told us, I feel like I'm just sitting around with friends talking about Disney.
Yeah.
So hopefully Beatrice read the fine print when she signed that Rich and Famous contract, that she's not going to actually be rich and famous.
Right, exactly.
So then,
but I will have tons of fun along the journey. That's what's important.
The name Grand Circle Tour podcast, where did that come from originally?
So
go ahead.
I know
we
who
might have different stories on it.
We may. My story is that one of the original 8, she came up with it. We were trying to think of a theme and how to, make it a little different than other podcasts. And we came up with the idea of kind of taking people on a tour or on an attraction, a ride. And the Grand Circle Tour is a term that's used in a lot of Disney attractions, the railway, the people mover, a lot of the transportation type attractions all say the term Grand Circle Tour, which, to be honest, a lot of Disney fans don't even know that. But it is something that's used a lot in Disney. So we came up with the idea of Grand Circle Tour podcast, and that each of us would kind of assume a role of some kind of, I don't know,
attraction.
Right. So I'm the conductor of the group. So Stan's the captain. Beatrice is the sorcerer,
And that's actually another thing that I was going to ask is because you do have like code names for each other. Is that something that when you join, Beatrice, maybe this is a great question for you since you're the newest. Do you choose your name, or is it something that's kind of, like given to you by the rest of everybody?
We go through a ceremony. It's kind of like a tribal. No, I'm just
There's a lot of fire, ice, smoke.
It's straight from the Mandalorian.
No, actually, they did ask me if I had a preference, if I could, come up with something that I liked. And I thought that I am sort of a creator of all magic and with what I do in life right now. So I thought that that would be a perfect, kind of role for me to be the sorcerer and kind of conjure up all this stuff. So when I came up with the idea, they thought, oh, we all like it. And so, as we have a conductor and the other, roles and things like that, it's sort of what we do. We use the Disney terminology, like this is my role. And when I hosted my very first show, which I had like sweaty palms, and it's like the second show I was ever on the podcast, and I was the host, and so they were my apprentices, kind of in my mind. So we just we have fun with it.
Yeah,
it's a great little way to create your own role.
Yeah, and that actually does you mentioning kind of joining the show that brings up the next item that how do you I don't know, I'm going to say it, but I don't mean like is there a vetting process or anything for people to join the show, but how do you determine who is going to be one of the 8? Is it something that like like you all know each other, or someone reaching out and say that they're really interested? What happens with that?
Most people join the show kicking and screaming.
we have to force them to be on.
Yeah, well, that's how most people come on.
It was like, would you rather go to prison? No, just kidding.
We've probably had I don't know, maybe 12, no, maybe more than that, 12, 15 hosts, okay, maybe throughout the years. And this is what happens. People either understand that it's a big time commitment and can't give that commitment, or some people just want to go into other things, like one of our latest co-hosts wanted to start up his own YouTube channel, and we're all very supportive of that, right? I mean, one of the other things is that we become friends. I mean, it's kind of like a business, a small little business here that we're running. So you become friends with your coworkers, but also friends outside of quote unquote work as well. But when it comes time to fill the role of someone that may have left, we kind of all sit down and talk about it. We always have our eyes and ears open. Like even right now, there may be some kind of secret list that like, oh, we would really want these people on the show eventually. But then it's a matter of approaching them, seeing if they're the right fit with our group. Beatrice, you were friendly with Chris, who Chris is actually a returning member. She was on our show, then left for a little bit, and now has come back. And Beatrice knows a few of the other co-hosts as well. So she was kind of like an obvious choice just because a lot of people knew who she was.
Okay. So Beatrice, you got to skip the like fire initiation to be able
interview process.
And so I remember, I think the first time Stan and I talked, we talked briefly about the Grand Circle Tour podcast, and have all 8 of you met in person? It's just like you know each other through different, maybe some of you have met in person, some of you met online and things like that, right? Okay. Have you ever tried to have like
every day
a grand
every day we try?
Yeah.
COVID has hurt that a lot. It's a lot harder now. But it is funny how I consider these guys like my very, very good friends, and it's from all over, not only the country, but Stan's in Canada too, so multiple countries. We have someone in California, someone in the St. Louis area, someone in the Tennessee area. You know, Beatrice is in Florida, Stan's in Canada. I'm in New York. So we represent, you know, the nation pretty well. Justin's in
North
is it North
Dakota.
Dakota?
North Dakota, yeah.
So, you know, pretty much spread out.
Yeah.
But I
And-
personally, and I've been around this whole time, I've never met any of them face to face.
I was, when I first started, as I said, when I first started the class and I kind of started doing this deep dive, like I was very impressed to see the number of people who do become friends, and how people pop up in different groups. Like I would go to one group like WDW Radio and I would see a whole bunch of people there, and I would go to GCT and I would see people, or friends of GCT, and I would see people there, and all these different groups. That it does, when I first started, I thought this is an extremely supportive community, and not just supportive of everybody's projects and everything, but supportive in the fact that people just want to come together and talk about Disney. And everybody might have different interests in Disney, but it's just kind of that big draw of Disney that people want to talk about. So that's really interesting to know. And another thing, since you said 15 or 14 or 15.
13 is the total we've had.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have people that aren't there anymore. Is there anywhere like a Hall of Fame that, like, you all have nicknames? Do you have, like, when somebody leaves the show, like a framed nickname like somebody would have when they have their jersey retired at a sports arena?
I don't think we have a Hall of Fame yet, right? Sam, we got to.
It's a good idea, though.
You,
It's definitely a good idea.
We're
You,
gonna have videos down Main Street.
We'll have to go to Cooperstown and see if they'll make a building or something for us.
The problem
Yeah,
is
you
all
could,
14 of us aren't good enough to make the Hall of Fame. So that's the problem.
Yeah, you mentioned WW Radio, and like Lou, I consider almost like the godfather of Disney podcasting. And through Lou and doing his meetups and his cruise lines, his cruises and all, that's how I was able to meet Beatrice, how I was able to meet Chris, how I met Justin, and that's kind of how they were brought onto the show.
Okay.
Was because of what Lou has done for the community.
yeah. And I real quick on, I know he would say it's what everybody has done for the community, based on when I hear him speak or communicate with him. But yeah, he was the second person to come speak to the class. And that was actually that was when people were still speaking in the class. It was before kind of these interviews or visits like this. And so I've been very, very grateful for what he did. And then just kind of keeping up with everything that has come from that. It's been really, really fun to do. So the next kind of the makeup of the show, or behind the scenes, like, how do you split up responsibilities of hosting, planning different shows, finding people, things like that?
So basically the way it works is we have a schedule made. It doesn't feel like it for the passengers that are listening to us. It seems very willy-nilly, I think. But we actually have a schedule made, and we all have the same calendar app that we download. So I make the schedule 6, 8, 10 weeks ahead. If someone's going on a trip or not going to be available, they let me know. I make sure I don't schedule them that week. I mean, we are volunteering. This isn't a job, and it's meant to be fun. So you can have time off. so I make the schedule. When I make the schedule, I have a host, 2 co-hosts, and a designate or an alternate. And that's how the schedule will be written. So say Beatrice is the host, and Dan and I would be her 2 favorite co-hosts that week, and you would be the alternate. So it's Beatrice's responsibility to come with the topic and let us know what the topic is and kind of what type of research we would need to do for that topic, as well as yourself, in case I'm sick that day or something comes up, I can't make it. It's your responsibility to fill in. So that's kind of how it's determined who's hosting, who's on each week.
Yeah. That's another fun thing is when everybody starts, or every show, the host always says my favorite two co-hosts, which is another one of those really really cool, like kind of inside things that everybody gets to share with. I think that's really,
Dan
really
started that one actually.
okay.
Yeah,
It was
'cause,
just me being a wise guy, and then
Yeah.
then everyone picked up on it, and then
Yeah.
it just became a thing.
and I
Yeah.
have to say, when the first time I heard it, I wasn't on that one. And I'm like, what do you mean those are your two favorite co-hosts?
Well, because the first few times I listened to the shows, I would listen to different shows where there were different hosts. I thought like, wow, yeah, so you're telling people they're your favorite co-host now, and two other people are your favorite co-hosts the next week. And so it took me a little bit to get a few episodes in to get onto it and everything. So
It's funny
And go ahead.
we meet a listener or someone messages on Facebook, we'll get that from them as well. They're like, oh, you're my favorite.
Yeah,
We all
yeah.
chuckle because we know what they mean.
And that's a great tip to take in your life everywhere. Like if say you go to the grocery store and you go through a certain cashier, you may have never ever had that cashier before. Just let them know you're my favorite cashier.
Yeah.
And you'll get extra special treatment that day.
yeah.
I actually received a message from the first show that I was on. A friend of mine, I guess, listened to the podcast for the first time because I said, "Hey, I'm going to be on this show," and she said, "Wow, you're already a favorite." It was great. I was like, "Oh yeah, sure."
So how did you come to or start calling people passengers rather than listeners? It may seem surface level.
It goes back to we were trying to think of a concept of being on the tour, and when we introduce the show, we say, for me, I'm the conductor, so you're supposed to be on the train, going around. I always say, getting ready to go on a tour around all things Disney, right? And then so you're a passenger on the train, right? That's what it's supposed to be. And then at the end, we come into the station at the end and the tour is over.
Yeah.
So
the idea is we're kind of taking you on an adventure every week.
Okay. Yeah. And
that's why we also call them adventures instead of chapters or episodes. An episode is something grandfather has, and it's not a good thing when a grandfather has an episode. So I avoid saying episodes.
The one going off on a quick tangent real quick, one of the sideshows, or one of you all just released, I saw this morning, the chapter 5 book of Boba Fett, and I haven't listened to it yet. I wanted to get just your quick responses to that, because Stan and Dan, you're both on that, right? Beatrice, where you did, I'm not sure if you do those shows, but just real quick kind of reaction to episode 5 of the book of Boba Fett.
Well, Dan isn't on that one. He hasn't. Have you watched any of the episodes yet, Dan?
Well, I'm a little behind, and it's funny because I obviously listening to our own show, and my co-hosts usually ruin the episodes for me, at least. So.
Well, then, so as I say in class, and I actually accidentally spoiled something for Stan yesterday.
Yes.
As I tell people in class, if you don't want to hear what's about to be said, you can mute yourself or just somehow distract yourself. Stan, real quick reaction.
So chapter 5 of, if you haven't heard it yet or watched it yet and you want to mute it right now, Dan, that goes for you. But Mandalorian is basically the main character in episode 5 or chapter 5 of Book of Boba Fett, and by far the best episode so far. And it makes you kind of like seriously, like the best episode of Boba Fett doesn't have Boba Fett in it. It's just kind of awkward and weird in a way.
It was like they just it was almost like they had an episode of The Mandalorian filmed, and they're like, you know what, let's just throw it in. And if it were real time, it could be like, hey, maybe this series could be a little slow right here or whatever, so let's give a boost here.
It
But
feels
yeah,
like
I
that.
did think it was really funny.
It feels like that they're like, hey, the fans want to see Mandalorian really bad. Let's
Yeah.
just do a Mandalorian episode
Yeah.
and make them happy. But
And,
you know, they're
We're gonna
filmed
have
like
another
months
friend
in,
doing-
Yeah.
in advance.
Well, and I just asked that because I think it's really funny that they did that. And it is, I've watched every episode, I think maybe at least 2 times, because I'll usually have something on in the background while I'm working. But that episode 5, I've probably watched 6 or 7 times because it is a really, really good episode. So back back onto the interstate. How do you, like, you explained how you come up with topics. So what are for each of you, what are some of the, maybe your favorite topics, the most fun topics you've had, or ones that you're, not to spoil anything, but you're trying to plan and you really want to talk about on the show? Beatrice, go ahead and start.
I've only personally been on 2, but I've listened to them a lot. When I'm on the elliptical and I'm working out, I would always listen to their adventures. But yeah, we had tons of fun talking about upcoming movies. That was really good.
Mhm.
You know, what we're looking forward to this year. And then the second show that I was on, I was actually hosting, and we talked about the different things that Disney has announced that we're looking forward to. So there are lots of great things in the mix coming up. So I like to keep it real positive, and everyone else seems to, you know, we're on the positive side of things. We don't want to come on here and trash everything, you know. So we talk about all the fun and happening. There is another topic that I kind of have in my head that I had as a backup plan for this past week, and we thought it would be a fun idea for another show altogether. So that's going to be like in the works, maybe some things that we might think could stand to be reimagined, or, you know, some different themes and things that, you know, we have in our head that might work, you know, just a fun imaginative kind of show. So that might be down the line if, you know, my next hosting, but it's been fun so far.
Okay. All right. Stan?
Well, what's hard is coming up with new topics that haven't been done already. Like, I'll suggest a topic like, oh, we did that one 2 years ago, we did that one 3 years ago, and I go, well, can we revisit? And they go, no, you got to come up with a different topic. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. I don't think we've done one about our favorite smells yet, and that's one I've been thinking that we should do. Then you came up with a good one about everyday names in Disney that you might not associate with Disney. I kind of like that idea of just kind of picking names through the Disney Wikipedia, and then the people that are listening can go, hey, that's me. That's, you know, I'll do a Cody. I'll do a like that.
Yeah, please take that one and run with it. I think it would be fun. Beatrice, the backstory of that is I Solo, the last name, is a Disney connection, and Hansen is a Disney connection. So I just quickly started trying to Google everybody to see if there was some type of prereq to be on the show, and I can't remember. Oh, so Beatrice, for you, I found Beatrice Stanhope is a supporting antagonist of George of the Jungle. So because I was trying to come up with some type of connect the dots right before.
Yeah, so you have to have a Disney name in order to be on the show, it turns out.
Well, in Luca, I was super excited because as they were running the race, I literally paused it and stopped and took a picture. There was someone holding up a sign that said, "Go Beatrice."
Oh, cool.
I was like, I paused and I took a picture. I'm like, yay, me, for just a moment, you know. And I've run many races over the years. I've done Dopey a couple of times at Disney. So, you know, that was just super exciting. I found a little connection, but yeah, we all have our own personal connections anyway.
Very cool. Dan, some of your favorite ideas?
Yeah, so I think I'm known for hosting a lot of like games. I love games. I always love to have fun. So it's funny, Holly, one of our co-hosts, always says when she gets the schedule, she always looks to see when she's on the show with me, because those are the hardest shows, she says, because I always like
everyone's nervous to be on with Dan because you know he's gonna get you embarrassed playing some kind of trivia or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's just my personality, and I like to like, when I'm listening to a podcast, I like to try to be involved, even though I'm not actually there, right? So if I try to write a show, that's just spitting out facts. Yet to some people that's great, right? And to some people like myself, that's great. But I also think some people like to like throw out, like start talking to the radio, or talking to their phone, like, oh no, that's not the right answer. Stan, how can you have said something like that? So I try to come up with different ideas to do that. I've also done some shows where we'll go over like our favorite music in the park, and then Jay, who edits our show, will throw in some clips of the music, and we've gotten a really good feedback on shows like those too. Where people could hear music in the park and things like that.
Yeah, and I can attest. I listen to most of these when I'm driving or if I'm out on a walk. And the episode y'all did on the movies you're looking forward to in 2022, I was definitely talking to my radio or to my I was that person walking around the neighborhood talking to myself seemingly about some of the movies that y'all were talking about, because there were some that I was really, really interested in. So there's a couple more things, and then I always like to end with some rapid questions, and so I won't take up too much more of your time, but I did want to get Beatrice, I know you have. Dan and Stan, have you gone back to the parks since they have reopened?
I have, yes.
Okay.
I
haven't left my neighborhood.
Okay.
Since.
The reason I ask is we went in November 2019, and there are a lot of changes, not just changes because of COVID and health precautions, but there are changes with the 50th anniversary, and like the Genie and Genie Plus. And Beatrice, maybe this is something that you would know more about than me. That what are people's reactions, you think, and what are your reactions to kind of the new system that we're working with and the new technology in the parks?
So as with most things Disney, anything that ever changes is like blows up the internet, especially if there's a cost to it. And to be quite honest with you, Disney was not the first one that did it.
Mm-hmm.
The parks down the street were already charging for that kind of thing, and they're still charging a lot more than Disney does. So it's something that I believe actually helps. When things are free, people just, jump all over it. But with a $15 charge, you get such a great experience. My husband and I tested it on Christmas Eve because I said, I want to test it during the busiest time of the year. Christmas is the busiest week of the year. I want to see what is the benefit of this. We were on and off rides from the moment I stepped foot in certain rides. We were off the ride in 20 minutes. And the standby lines were, much longer than that. So I've told, my clients, what is the value of your time? If you believe your time is worth that, it's worth it. Mm-hmm. It just depends on whether you believe your time is valuable like that, because you can save lots of time. You can go on several different things that way. But, if you don't want to put the money into it, you don't have to. Yeah. You can still have a wonderful time. So It just depends on every single person and what's more important to you.
Yeah. Dan, have you used it yet?
I have not used Genie Plus. Last time I was there was over the summer, and Genie Plus did not come out yet. Okay. But there were definitely a lot of changes, from what I'm used to in the parks. I just think, and it goes with any trip that you go to, to Disney, it's a chore to prep for Disney, right? And that's why some people like to listen to our podcast, because we help them along with that kind of stuff. You just have to do your research beforehand. Mm-hmm. And if we think that, Genie's going to stay the way it is right now, we're fooling ourselves, because in a couple of years from now, it's all going to be different as well, mm-hmm. right? That's just the way Disney is.
The Stan, from watching from not being in the parks, do you have any thoughts on the inclusion, or I guess introduction, of Genie and Genie Plus?
Well, it seems very similar to what Max Pass Plus was at Disneyland. And I've used that there a couple of times, and I really enjoyed it. I thought I got more than my money's worth out of it. And in Disneyland, I believe they also include the photo pass with it. Do they not? Beatrice, do you know?
It has special features. So if you do Genie Plus, there are several little things that you can do your photo with, and you can make yourself into the genie from Aladdin, or you can hold yourself, hold an ice cream bar. You have all these fun little features that you can do. So it does come with some special photos that you can take, that selfie photos that would not be included even if you bought the photo pass.
So it does. I mean, like, I'm gonna have to try it, but I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard people that really enjoyed it, and I've also heard people saying it's just too much money for my family. I got a family of 4 kids, and it's just out of my price range. I'm not doing this. So and you can understand that, you can appreciate that.
The last time that we went, it was 5 of us, and we were celebrating one of my son's birthdays. I was celebrating a milestone birthday. So my justification, now I think I'm going to justify it every time I go, but my justification was like, we're going to, I'm going to go a little bit bigger. We stayed and we were staying at Art of Animation so we could take the Skyliner everywhere, which, by the way, that's one of the coolest things to me. If I was a local, I would just go ride the Skyliner most days. But we had an amazing time. 2 things that came up to me is it did feel awkward to me walking up in the fast pass or the lightning lane line, especially the ones where you had to do like individual lightning lanes. Because in the past, Disney has never shied away from treating people differently based on, or giving them more based on how much they spend. But within the parks and at the rides, it used to not be as visible, at least for me, unless you saw the people who spent $2,500 a day to have like the private tour and everything. It did feel different to me walking up in those lines, because it kind of felt like maybe everyone else could see like, oh, well, they're walking up because they paid for this experience. And other kids maybe asking their parents like, well, why can't we do that? Because we would go to a few rides where the line would be 20 minutes long, so we would just go, and my kids were asking, I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, they're both asking, why can't we have a fast lane for this one? I'm like, well, we don't really need it for this one. And the second observation is, if you have kids, you really need to do it, because it is focused toward people with kids, because the number of times I was asked, do we have a fast lane for this or that? And plus, I mean, standing in line trying to keep your kids from crawling on the floor or putting their faces where they shouldn't be on poles and things like that. Like it's a really good thing to have. And I do see kind of the future of it, and how maybe it will disperse people around the parks and maybe make it seem a little less crowded for people as they go. But yeah, thanks for that. I don't know if anybody has any more thoughts on that, feel free.
I'll just tell you a quick story, Cody, and we've said the story a few times on our airwaves. But when Slinky Dog first opened, I went down there like a week or 2 after it opened, and I wanted to get some footage for the podcast and everything. And I was live streaming online, and I had my Grand Circle Tour podcast t-shirt on. I'm with my son and my dad, who, by the way, my dad looks at me, says, Dan, you're a pretty successful guy, yet you do a podcast in your basement. So he has some like mixed feelings about the podcast, right? And a cast member comes over to us, and I quickly stop the live feed, and she's like, hey, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm just trying to get some footage for the podcast. She's like, oh, do you know the Grand Circle Tour podcast? And I'm like, yeah, I'm one of the hosts. And she said, oh, well, you don't have to wait online then. And she brought myself, my father, and my son, and we cut the entire line. And so that's like the only thing I really got out of this podcast I always joke about. But the point is that it was like my own private lightning lane.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, my feelings towards it, I didn't feel bad at all. I was waving to people. I was like, ha ha.
It's like Wayne Campbell and Wayne's World with the VIP pass at the Alice Cooper concert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think I gained some of my father's respect, by the way.
One question is, so next time you all go, are you just going to have lanyards that say Grand Circle Tour Podcast, and see if you need to wait or
We
not?
tell people all the time, we tell our passengers all the time, just wear the shirt and see what
Just
happens.
buy one of our shirts. Yeah.
And I say I felt a little odd, and we had an amazing time with it. As I said, I think I'll justify it every time I go back. I did say I felt a little awkward with it, like people knowing. But in 2016 we went, and I had an experience where there was like a mix up with one of the hotels and everything, where a cast member ended up giving like 4 or 5 extra fast passes for everybody. So essentially we had like kind of unlimited fast passes while we were there. And I remember thinking like, hey, if this is ever something that eventually this is going to be something they're going to pay, or you're gonna have to pay for, and I'm all there. So like, that going along with your story, Dan, like I really liked that.
The other thing too
Go
is
ahead, Sam.
it's always been that way at Disney, where you couldn't get a fast pass for everything.
Yeah.
So at some point you were the person standing in line while someone else was getting a fast pass.
Yeah.
And I think it's still like that even with the Lightning Lane, because you still can't get fast passes for everything.
Yeah. And it is now, you have to get on early enough to get the fast pass for like Rise of the Resistance and like Ratatouille and things like that. And then like with Rise of the Resistance, hope that your fast pass, like the ride, is working when you go, because we actually had our fast pass moved back like an hour or so, or we went like an hour or two after we were supposed to, because the ride had broken down for a little bit. So the last thing before the rapid questions, and we're going to try to get out of here quick, because I don't want to take up too much time. In the class, the students do something where they write a paper on an MCU character they identify with. And the purpose of it is that they get to take a deeper dive into the characteristics of the characters and the personalities of the character and match it to their personality. And then hopefully it kind of helps move forward in just pointing out things that people want to see about themselves, or that they want others to see about them, and try to emulate that. So in the spirit of that, I had asked all of you to think about that. And as I said, you didn't need to read or watch anything that we do in class. But I didn't know if all of you had come up with 1 or 2 characters real quick that you see yourselves as in the MCU. And we can
see Dan
start
smirking, so he's got one prepared for sure.
Well, go
I
ahead,
definitely
Dan.
thought about this a little bit.
Go ahead, Dan.
So originally when you gave me this assignment, immediately I said to myself, oh, that's easy. I'm Captain America, right? And then I said to myself, well, that's a little bit being a little vain, isn't it? I mean, come on, I'm not Captain America. I mean, I can't be that good.
Yeah, I thought I was Captain Canada, and I thought the same way. I think I'm not really Captain Canada.
So I thought about it, and it's funny where I landed on, because he's not really one of my favorites, but I think I'm pretty much like Star-Lord. And I think there's a couple good qualities that Star-Lord has, and a couple bad qualities that Star-Lord has that I share. And let's face it, if there was like a real snap in this world, I'd probably be the cause of it, just like Star-Lord was really the cause of the snap, right? So let's start there. He's the funny guy, right? I think I'm probably considered the funny guy on the show. He's got the dance moves. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but it's not called Dan Sing for nothing. It's the DAN is there for a reason. His bad qualities, he has a lot of outbursts. I'm guilty of that. Impulsive. I mean, there's no one more impulsive than me. A bit vain, right? I mean, I thought I was Captain America, and a little insecure. And at times that's how I feel. But at the same time, he has great, he values relationships, with Yondu and his father. And, I feel like I'm kind of the same thing. And he's committed to Gamora, and just like I'm committed to this podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my breakdown of who I am.
I think
Well,
Star-Lord has a good heart also, and I think Dan has a good heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good quality as well.
Well, and not to put the pressure on you, Stan and Beatrice, but Dan, if you were in the class, you would have gotten an A on the assignment, because that's what the students reading some of these papers, it blows me away that it's one of those things that I'm honored to hear people's reasonings for them, because it's truly awesome.
Oh, it's great. It's a great idea. When I saw that, I was like, wow, if you would have given me a week, I would have had like a 5-page paper for
that. Stan, go ahead.
Well, I only had a D and I only got 6 pages out, but the double space. I'm very much, I like my alone time. I'm very like solo is not only my last name, but it's also kind of who I am. Like I go to Disney solo a lot. Like more often than not, I go solo on my trips. So I enjoy being on my own a lot. At the same time, I also enjoy being with the group and growing up, and you have the different cliques. I was in every clique, and I also was be able to do stuff on my own.
Yeah. And
I'm thinking to myself, like, which superhero is kind of like that? And I thought, well, Hawkeye was in the West Coast Avengers. He was in the Avengers. He's also does a lot of solo work. He does it very well. And at the end of the day, Hawkeye's the one that gets the stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I feel. But at the same time, his most important thing is to get home to his family. And that's kind of how I feel my personal life and my work life as well. Like I want to get the job done and get home.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of associate myself with Hawkeye the most.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Beatrice.
And I got a D.
I was going to say, you're pretty good at archery, so yeah.
And I'm very good at archery too. I'm good at getting.
you would have had an A as well, Stan.
I should have added, by the way, that I also hang out with a group of misfits when I record the show.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Okay, I'm changing my name to Rocket. I'm going to be Rocket now. Never mind. Go ahead, B.
So again, mine is not my favorite Marvel character, but when we were watching all of the shows and the snap happened, I also connected very, very much with Hawkeye. That's when he became more visible to me, because in 2014 I had a year like that where I lost everyone in the world that I felt like I loved at the time. Then without going into all of the whole personal backstory, I felt my heart crush when I saw Hawkeye go through that. And I also had to relate to the fact that, I wanted to remain good. He went through a period of time where it was very dark and rough. Mm-hmm. And inside, we all go through those moments, and we have to be the good that comes out of it. And so in the new series with Kate Bishop, I'm like, oh, I've got, it's so great, because she followed him all along the way, and she wanted to be just like that. And so now he has someone, to be a good role model. He's got his family back. It's sort of like me, I've got, the good that comes out of it now. So I very much related to him in the fact that, we all go through those periods, and we all have to be good and come out the other side and keep moving forward, being great with our team, being great with our families and our life. So that was my guy. Of course, we, as in our podcast, some of us always have the same answers. So
I thought for sure you were gonna have Hulk.
I love, he's my favorite. My Hulky's my favorite. But when it comes to the whole story of it, Hawkeye's the guy that I feel most related to.
Well, and thanks for that. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, you kind of get a glimpse of what these are. These is I get these type of papers every semester, and it's as I just have to keep saying it, I'm honored to do it. I'm honored to read it, because of kind of getting a glimpse into all of this. So thank you. And yes, if all of you were in the class, you would have gotten an A with it. And you, Cody,
what's your hero?
So Dan, this will seem very vain. There is a reason though. I identify most with Captain America because with Steve Rogers Captain America, because I haven't gone through the struggles that Sam Wilson's Captain America would go through, or will have gone through. The reason I identify with Steve Rogers, because it does feel very vain, but that he doesn't like bullying. And outside of this, when I write a lot about kind of what would bring groups together, what would bring people together, and what are the commonalities that people have. And like another project that we have worked on, I've had great grad students work on, is actually comic strips dealing with the anti-bullying and kind of using the sports setting to show how people should get along and everything, and how just because you're in a different group doesn't mean you have to hold on to the animosity toward a person. Like, you can still help people and things like that. So it's more of me wanting to always be better and always like kind of stand for that, rather than like, I don't know if anybody truly like kind of represents Captain America, because that does seem a extremely high bar to reach, right?
So on the Grand Circle Tour, we don't give grades, we give points. Dan, how many points does he get for that?
2,000 points.
Oh wow,
is
that's
that
a
good?
good score.
Okay,
That's
awesome.
that's the joke, is no one really knows what it's out of. So
So I have a few rapid questions, and thank you everybody for doing this. With these rapid questions, you can explain. You don't have to explain at all. You can just give your answer, or you can give your answer and a little bit of a backstory if you want. But the first, and we'll just go with, because on my screen, the way I'm looking at it, we'll go with Beatrice, Stan, and then Dan for each one of these. So the first one is favorite park. That can be within Walt Disney World. That could be anywhere around the world if you have gone to any of the other parks. So favorite park, Beatrice, you go first.
Epcot, because my history, I was born in Germany. My dad's family came from Norway, and I've never seen that country. And I just love the ability to see all the cultures come together into one.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Stan.
I've never been to it, but Tokyo Disneyland.
Okay.
But the ones I've been to, Disneyland, the original.
Okay. Dan.
Epcot World Showcase, best place on the planet.
Okay. The next is any park you've been to, a favorite attraction that is a ride.
Radiator Springs.
Okay.
I love it.
I haven't been to that one yet. I've watched the YouTube videos of it, and yeah, I definitely want to go to that. So Stan.
Yeah, hands down, Rise of Resistance.
Okay.
You can't beat that.
Splash Mountain is my favorite.
Okay. All right. And then favorite attraction that is a show.
Call it Mission Breakout. Go with the movie.
Okay.
I love Avengers and Star-Lord. We'll go all into, not really a show, but it's a movie. We'll go with that.
Okay. All right, Stan.
Yeah, it's a toss up between World of Color and Fantasmic at California Adventure and Disneyland.
All right.
Probably Fantasmic, a little bit over World of Color.
Okay. Dan.
Retired show, I'll go with Wishes, was always my favorite. Show that's there now, well, I guess they're redoing it, but I love the Finding Nemo musical.
Okay. Yeah. Favorite restaurant on any property, and that could be Disney Springs, Downtown Disney, anywhere on any Disney property.
I have to go with my heart is Beer Garden. My mother was a German chef. It brings me back home. I miss her.
Stan.
The one place I can never ever miss when I go is the Fish and Chip Shop in
Okay.
Epcot. That's a must stop every trip. I think that's the only restaurant I've been to every single trip.
For me, it's Ohana.
Ohana.
That's
All
a good one too. Yeah.
Okay. And then two more. Favorite, do you have a favorite hotel on any property?
Riviera.
Okay.
I love the Riviera. It's so beautiful.
Stan?
Well, my favorite one I can afford is Pop Century. My favorite one I can sort of afford is Riverside, and my favorite one I would want to stay at it would be Polynesian.
Okay.
Yeah, but Pop Century is that's the Solo Studios. That's just like, that's the, most people call it that, the Solo Studios. Very few people call it Pop Century anymore.
Good. Go ahead, Dan.
I fibbed a little bit with the park. I said Epcot, but the joke on the show is that my favorite park is Disney Springs. I consider that a park. So therefore, Saratoga Springs is actually my home resort as a DVC member, and within walking distance to Disney Springs.
Okay. All
and
right.
the pub.
And whenever we go and we stay on property, I'm gonna be hard pressed to stay anywhere other than somewhere that's on the Skyliner, because like I said, I just love that. Last one, we go with small kids, so we don't typically do a lot of restaurants and things that are going to take a long time, but I get a lot of treats while I'm there. Favorite Disney treat in any of the parks?
Oh, that's a toss up. It's either the pretzel in Germany or it's not the Mickey ice cream bar. So I always everyone gets upset with me over this. It's not it's the Toll House chocolate chip cookie with the ice cream in the middle. It's very specific. But yeah, it's the cookie with the ice cream in the middle, and it just depends on whether I'm in a sweet or salty mood at that moment.
Yeah. Stan?
It's tough to beat the carrot cake cookie
Okay.
at Disney Hollywood Studios. And
You're
between the
gonna go
Mickey bar
popcorn.
and the ice cream sandwich, popcorn too, yeah, popcorn. Oh man! And between the Mickey bar and the ice cream sandwich, I gotta go ice cream sandwich.
Okay.
And
Okay.
those elephant ears are really good too at Animal Kingdom. If you ever had those are awesome.
The and now the sandwiches and Mickey bars are sold in stores, which is both great and not so great, depending on how you look at it. Dan, go ahead.
Cheeseburger spring rolls.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's it for us. I really, really appreciate doing this. As I said, I've wanted to talk with people from the show for a while, because I think what you all do is so fun and is very unique in the way that you approach it, and kind of the way that you organize it with 8 people. So please, on behalf of the class, thank everybody that's associated with the show, because it's so much fun to listen to. And the last thing, if somebody wants to keep up with Grand Circle Tour podcasts, what's the best way for them to do so?
That's you, Dan.
You could find us on any of your podcasting platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. We're on YouTube. Just search Grand Circle Tour Podcast. You could find us on our socials. Grand Circle Tour Magic Ticket Holders is our Facebook page or group, and we chat all day in there. Or our Facebook group, our Instagram page is Grand Circle Tour Podcast.
All right. Well, great. And Stan, Dan, Beatrice, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thank you for having us. It was a lot of fun.